it's Tammy Pally, aka the Crafty Princess, and jewelry maker and doll collector. And this is a video where I'm going to attempt to show you how to make these triple loop head pins. Okay. I had a request from somebody on Facebook to do this video, and I actually have a tutorial on my old about.com site, jewelrymaking.about.com. I will attempt to put the link in the comments, but unfortunately about.com has made my website, my old website over there, look like crap. So I apologize, it is not my fault. I have old content over there that they have jammed into new templates without changing anything, and so the images are wacko and things are just chopped off. Like if you go into some of the category areas where it says something like beginning beaded jewelry or beginning beaded earrings or something like that, there are no titles to any of the projects anymore. It just says something like introduction and materials. That's the subheader, that's not the header, and I guess they don't care. So I thought, since I'm doing videos, I will try to show you how to do this. Like I said, somebody asked me how to make these, and these are kind of I guess a signature of mine. I love to make the triple loops, and I think they make earrings look super cool. You can also do this and make pendants as well. Like for example, I actually did do this on a necklace where, in fact, I think I have that necklace here. I can show you that. Let me preface this with, I do not have the camera set up to do a really, what I would consider a proper tutorial for this. So for you people who want to, give me a thumbs down, cut me some slack, Jack. If you don't like it, just move along. Move along, okay? I'm just doing the best I can, and this is not really super difficult to do once you get some practice in. And here's a necklace. I got the chain kind of, okay. So here's a necklace that has a similar concept. I did the same thing with those earrings. Get on down there. I made an earring, okay, but I turned it into a pendant. And you could do the same kind of thing and do it where you have, instead of using wire like I did here and make this centerpiece thing, you could just do that and then have, do bead stringing and just bead, use this as, let me put it on this thing, maybe it's a little bit easier to see it. Okay, I think I have made a picture of this too, a photograph, so I'll put some photos at the end of this of pieces that are using the triple loop. Also, I should say that you can do this freehand like I'm about to show you, or you can use a wire jig. And definitely, if you are one of those people that are just, perfectionist, what do you call it? I don't want to say anal, but I guess I said it. But if it really is going to bug you that your loops are not perfect every single time, get a jig. Again, walk away, go get that jig. See you later, okay? I love jigs. It's just that before, and actually I knew jigs before I started doing this freehand. I can't really say why I prefer it freehand. It's just easier for me because I have the tools there. What can I say? To me, it's just blip, 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 and I can have it done, okay? So we'll see if it actually goes blip, blip, blip on this video. All right, so I'm using, this is Beading. This is silver plated, I think it's called German style wire. This is 20 gauge. I normally don't like to use 20 gauge. To me, this is a little heavier than I prefer to use, but they didn't have anything thinner at the local craft store. This is from Beading, and I don't remember how many. It's in a little package that they hang up. All right. I really prefer 22 or 21. If you can find 21 gauge, that's like my most favorite. But 22 gauge isn't too bad. And of course, if you don't know, the way that the wire is measured is by the gauge. And so something that's 20 gauge is going to be a little bit thicker than something that's 22 gauge. So the higher the number, the thinner the wire. The lower the number, the thicker. So I would not use anything thicker personally than 20, because you want to make sure that your beads fit on the wire at some point, because if you're going to use this, basically you're creating a head pin with a little triple loopy thing at the bottom, and so you want to make sure that your beads fit on here. If you're using pearls, then you would probably need to use either special big hold pearls or go down to at least probably 24 gauge. Again, always before you get into doing this, you haven't done this ever before, always double check that your beads that you plan to use are going to fit on the wire. Otherwise, it's a big bummer. As far as tools go, I use, you need a good pair of wire cutters, preferably the flush cut kind, because that way when you cut, you have more of a flat end to the wire. If you don't have it, not a big deal. You can get a jewelry file, and you should have these anyways if you work with wire a lot. They're super handy. You can get a set of 10 for around $10 to $15, very inexpensive. And you want jeweler's files. A nail file, not going to do it. And all you have to do is take the end and just do this a couple times. You know, if it's rough, you know, always kind of check. If you cut it really well, I find a lot of times I don't have to do this extra step. I'd always double check. And if it's rough, just a little bit with your file. You also need definitely round nose pliers. That's how you get the loops. That's how you make the round part of the wire, is with round nose pliers, okay? Round nose. I suggest getting them as tapered as much as possible. If you have the fatter the nose, obviously the fatter your loop's going to be, okay? So if you want to be able to get really tiny loops, you need the smaller ends here. So, and this is, this graduates, so you can use the thicker end or the middle part or the little end, depending on how big you want your loops. I also like to have a couple pair of chain nose pliers and bent nose. I like this pair of bent nose pliers I got like a million years ago. I don't even remember where. I think it was a bead shop that's no longer around anymore. And then these chain nose pliers are also good, or sometimes you've heard them called flat nose pliers. The only big thing with these is you make sure that the inside, definitely with these, because sometimes there'll be texture inside. You don't want them texture because that'll mark your wire. All right, so that's the basics. And again, like I said, I prefer to use usually dead soft 21 gauge is my fave. You can use brass wire. I like red brass because it has more of a goldeny color. You can use copper wire. You can use aluminum. That's super soft, so just be aware of that. But usually any type of these craft wires like this, you do not want to use that super tiny thin craft wire that's like 30 gauge. Not going to work, okay? It doesn't have what you need for this. Oh, and another thing I like as far as tools is this is Euro Tools makes this. I can go that way. Euro Tools makes this nylon nose plier, and it's good for, if your wire is kinked, you can straighten it out. I use it to press on my pieces when I want to flatten them a little bit. I would not recommend pounding on the loops I'm going to show you because they do cross over wire. Again, that's why some people prefer to use a jig, because it's easier to pull it off and rework it so you don't have crossing wires, but I don't care. So you need to have, if you're going to make these into earrings or a pendant, for example, and you have, like those were 6mm beads, I would recommend at least 5 to 6 inches of wire. Anything less than that is going to be kind of just difficult to work with. So I'm going to cut off about that much here, okay? There is my wire. All right, now you're going to, again, if you felt like it was not, if it was not even enough, you can take your jeweler file and just go zoop, zoop, zoop a couple times. This is not really going to be touching anybody because it's going to be curled in, but you can do that if you want to. I usually try to use the middle part of my round nose pliers. And whatever you do, you just want to be consistent, right? Because especially if you're making earrings, again, if you're anal and they're not going to be exactly perfectly next to each other, and you're worried that they're not going to be the same, go get a jig. But as you're working, try to be cognizant, be aware of what area of the pliers you're using, and use the same area so that you have the same size loops. Let me find those earrings again. So what I'm saying is here are those loops. about the same. Sometimes the center loop is a tad bigger, but it's all the size, whatever you want to do. Just consistency is the key. So I get about to the middle of my round nose pliers nose, and I'm going to just make a loop. I'm trying not to look into the camera because that is opposite. So now I have a loop. I have my first loop. So now I need to make a second loop right next to that one. And at this point, I find, if you notice, the first time I grabbed the end of the wire and I use the pliers to bend the wire. From now on, most of the time, I find it easier to just kind of let the nose of the pliers sort of work like a mandrel and move this with my hands. And I will also say, I have arthritis in my hands. I actually have some bone loss in my wrist. So again, I prefer the dead soft. It's easier for me. It can hurt my hands and my wrists too much if I really use super heavy duty wire. But you can, experiment and see what works best for you. So at this point, I place again about the middle part of the nose of my pliers right next to the loop that I've already made. If this helps at all, I don't know. So there's the loop, but I'm holding it this way. Was this perpendicular here? Was this parallel, right? And now I'm going to wrap this around the nose, okay? And then now I have 2 loops. And you could actually do a 2-loop one. I've done 2-loop head pins as well, but I like the triple. All right, so we've got 2 loops. So, and they're about the same size because I used about the same area on my pliers. Same kind of thing. Place your round nose pliers right next to the second loop that you just did. Okay, so right next to the second loop. And again, just keeping your round nose pliers in place. Move the wire, not the pliers, and wrap the wire around. Now you have 3 loops. Okay. Now, if you notice, and I don't think I can probably show this to you. I don't know if you can really see this that well on the camera. There's an itsy bitsy teeny weeny bit of space in between my loops, and this is why I say, do not take this and take a wire. I mean, you could do it, but just be careful, okay? Don't take a hammer and bam, 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 bam. So as I was just eloquently saying, do not take a hammer and bang the bejesus out of this. If you're going to use a rawhide hammer, and that's the only type, do not use a metal hammer or a copper hammer or anything like that. If you're going to use a hammer, you want to use a rawhide hammer, and preferably do it on something like a like maybe put a piece of leather or something over your surface that you're going to pound on. You kind of want to cushion the blow. But instead of the banging, I have learned over the years, especially again, this is soft wire. Really, if you just use one of these and you can just sandwich it here and gently press a little bit, And at this point, if you mangled this at all, you could take it and straighten it up a little bit. This also, by the way, helps to work harden your wire a little bit. All right, so now you have a head pin, and if you know how to do the rest, you could stop here, but I'm just going to go ahead and make this into an earring. You put on your beads, okay, and let's see, I have some silver colored ones here. Decided to use red and silver because I think it shows up better, so I have a 6mm bead, and then this is about a 4mm silver colored bead, and then another 6mm bead. Get that in there, dude. Can't see. Okay. All right. So you can see I have plenty of wire left to finish this off, and I probably really only need maybe that much to finish it off. If you're using base metal, you don't have to worry about the scraps so much. If you want to save your scraps, you can check places like Rio Grande. They will take scraps at spot prices, I believe, and then you could even use that to trade in for the real thing. All right, so once you get this much done, if you wanted to change it, turn this into an earring, you take your flat nose or chain nose pliers, and I usually do, like, I would say it's probably like 1/4 of an inch or so above the last bead. You don't want to make it super tight. I'm going to do a wrap loop. You don't want to make it super duper close to the bead, because especially if you're using crystal beads or glass beads, these are matte glass beads, by the way, you could actually crack the bead, or it could crack over time with the stress. So if there's a teensy little bit of space in there, that's actually kind of okay. Then I bend it 90 degrees. You notice I'm bending it away from me, and so it's 90 degrees. And then I grasp the bent area with my round nose pliers. Again, I kind of tend to work in the middle so that my loops can be similar, and I just use my fingers and wrap this around. I adjust it and keep wrapping. So there you go. So now you have this, and you can see it's kind of twisted a little bit, but that's okay. You can change this stuff, you know. And this is soft enough that I can bend it a little bit with my fingers if necessary. Now, there's two schools of thought. You can put your round nose pliers back in there, put your finger right here so you're touching and you're holding the wire against the round nose pliers nose, and wrap this with your hand like that around. So you wrap the wire around itself to make a wrap loop. Another way you can do it is, you need 2 pliers for this. That's why having a chain nose and a flat nose are pretty handy. You can use a pair of pliers and hold the loop flat like that, and then either, again, use your hand if it's soft enough, or if you have just a short amount of wire here, you can use the pliers. This is long enough. Let me flip this around so those little bit parts are out of my way. This is long enough that I can do it. 1, 2, 3. Okay. There I have a loop at the top. All right, so then I get my wire cutters again and trim off that last little bit of wire. And if possible, you don't want it flinging across the room and poking somebody in the eyeball. I have a little extra. And honestly, I could take this and I can make this into a figure 8 and use it. So that's a total usable length of wire. Now, there's a little teeny bit sticking up here. Let me go this way. There you go. You can kind of see it. It's a teeny itty bitty bit of wire still sticking up. I take my pliers and just go right to the loop part, and this is probably impossible for you to see. And I just flatten it in there. So it's not sticking out. I use my fingers and feel it, okay? And at this point, if I was feeling it, like if I flattened it in there and I squished it in there as flat as I could, and I could still feel something, I would use this and file it a little bit. But I don't have that problem. Okay, so now I have this. And let's see, I did not bring ear hooks with me, did I? But you have an earring ready to go. You can just add the ear hook on there, and you have to decide how you want this oriented. When you add the ear hook, you know, do you want the loops facing out, or do you want them facing sideways when the person wears it? So if I wanted to change the orientation, you can just at this point still flip it like that, so that they're this way. So the wire is soft enough, is what I'm trying to say, that you can adjust this at this point a little bit. You don't want to go bananas with it and break it. I will say, like, you know, with anything that you're crafting, anything that you're making by hand, it will take time. You're not going to make, I mean, maybe you will. Maybe you're going to make perfect loops the first time. That's fabulous. But even myself, sometimes I goof up, or sometimes I look at something and I'm like, oh, this loop is bigger than that one, you know. Yeah, so you're not a machine. This is handcrafted. Keep that in your mind, and just, you know, allow yourself the time to practice, and loop and loop and loop. And you can do a lot of different things. This is a head pin. Like I said, you can turn it into earrings. You can turn it into, a pendant on a necklace. I have created actually all kinds of findings with these. I've added these to the ends of hooks and stuff. In fact, I have a book. It's no longer in print, where I did wire findings. I think it's called Making Designer Beads and Wire Findings. But it was published by Query, and if you, I would bet that you could go find a used copy for like 5 cents on Amazon at this point. It's a very old book. But I have all kinds of triple loop things in there. And they're also on my bat.com site. I still encourage people to go over there because I have a ton of information. It's just not as simple to locate it as it used to be because they don't send out individual newsletters anymore. But, there's still a library of what I hope is very useful information over there. And, so I still encourage you to go over there. Plus I get like a penny for every 5 billion clicks. So it's nice to get that, 5 cents every month or so from them. But yeah, that's the triple loop. I hope that helps you. And, again, just practice. But if you have questions, feel free to either add them in the comments. That's probably the best way. That way, because if you have a question, probably other people have a similar question. But you can also message me. And, like I said, be genteel. This is not a perfect tutorial, but I think it gives you a gist of what to do, especially if you already have some wire and bead experience. And have a wonderful jewelry making day, crafting day, etc. Dolly day for my Dolly peeps too. And thank you for watching. As usual, please subscribe, thumbs up, and that's it. Bye-bye.